mean, it's not
You
hard.
do
You
both.
probably do it all, but
Yeah.
so I am sharing my screen, and I know it doesn't look good yet, but does it look good now?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
So
better.
Jules, meet Jessica.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Jules. Nice to meet you.
She just welcome. She's going to do this beginning part. Actually, I kind of want to fix that lettering there in a second. Let me get back out of, I didn't mean to do that. Where did you go? Webinars.
This is why we
I'm so
hop on earlier as well, Jessica, just so we can figure out all our tech stuff so that the whole conversation
Oh,
is so smooth.
I know. I have been fiddling around. I just moved
Here we go.
recently, so I have boxes and stuff everywhere. I've been playing with my background, which you can't see as a shower curtain in my doorway behind me.
Oh,
You can
Yeah.
never tell.
Can't tell. Getting my lighting situated and all that kind of stuff. So I hope you can hear me okay. I do have a headset too that I can fiddle with if it's echoey or something. But
and I have a headset too. I'm just remind me before we get started. I'll put them in. It's just I don't know. I think they're pretty charged, but just in case.
same, mine are plugged in. Yeah. Okay.
So I know this isn't in slideshow mode yet, but just in case I need to make any edits, I just changed that
Perfect.
logo so it like looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
So just Jules, a little background. So Jules is in LA and she's gonna introduce the topic and introduce like me and anybody else from the team. And then she's gonna like talk your accolades and and all of that.
Perfect.
And then she's going to like basically turn it over to me. And then the first question, hang on, I want to just do this. I'm going to blur my background too, because I'm in the car dealership.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're making it happen.
Yeah,
I had to get work today.
Yeah, I had to get my snow tires removed, and I already had this appointment. And then Sam was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be flying. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll just do it from the dealership." So I commandeered an office.
I love it. Good for you.
Yeah, I can have my own office at the car dealership because I spend so much money here.
Yeah, I love that. That's resourcefulness at its finest.
So these first few slides, Jules will introduce. These might be some of the people who will join us, and then she will introduce you. And let me make it a little bit bigger. But Jessica, do you want to just double check that this looks okay? She won't say it all, like she won't read it word for word. That's like Jules's special talent, is saying like really nice things about you without and making it really interesting without like reading word for word.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
Okay. Because I can make any changes.
No, this is all correct. That's great. I think, probably some of this is from my LinkedIn, some of it from conversations we, had. I think that's a really nice brief summary.
Okay. And then we'll kind of just talk about our sponsor, which is TMAUSA. This is the tool I was telling you about that I use with my clients. Piece of it is a psychometric test.
Mm-hmm. Are we still adding that in, Wendy? Because I feel like Sam's been taking it out and then just doing adding it to the podcast later, just to give us a little extra time.
Okay.
But
let's just do it really fast.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the very end,
you'll plug your next week.
Around like 45 minutes in, then we'll kind of just like take a minute to like look at what's coming next week. And I know she's from Australia, and we recorded it like separate because of the time zone change. So it's just kind of weird that we wouldn't schedule like the same topics, but we did hers like a different time. And then next week we're all having an offsite, so we can't do it live. I don't know if you know that, Jules, we're not doing it live.
First I've heard of it, but good to know.
Yeah, we don't need you next week because we're going to play this like.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, that's a bummer. But Jessica, the cool thing is that I feel like you have such a different thing.
It's going to be very different. I have a unique perspective on burnout, and it's because I researched it, but I also lived it and learned it with a lot of different people. And so my perspective on what you do about it and where it really comes from is kind of different than what you would get from get from other people. So
she's like very neuroscience, which I'm not saying that what we do isn't, but she's just
different.
very like from that perspective about like how the prefrontal cortex and all this stuff. So what you and I are going to talk about today is like totally different. I was like, I'm not even worried. It's actually kind of cool. Like totally different
I think it's great. I think these things will complement each other. I mean, the truth of the matter is stress impacts the body and the brain, and that part of understanding what's going on is important, and addressing the stress in your body is important. And so the brain is a really big piece of, what's going on and where these mechanisms come from. So I hope that they are actually complementary to each other, and one can build on the other, and people can take that for what it is. So it's kind of like a nice back-to-back for folks on a couple different perspectives on a really big and really prevalent topic right now.
That's true. And, she actually just talked about it more individualistic, and you're taking that leadership approach, which I think what you just said before Jules jumped on is such a huge, like, meaty piece that I want to make sure we have you say again when we get started. So what'll happen after we do your intro slide is Jules will kind of kick it to me. And the first question I'm going to ask you is basically just like, so tell us about you, like, how did you get into this? Like, is this something you personally experienced? Like, how did you go down this rabbit hole and go into this, like a very niche thing? I would say, your approach and everything you do is like a very unique and niche thing. And is quite different than even this other woman's take on burnout. So, and by the way, we have never even had anyone speak on burnout before. And I think it's so weird that we're having them 2 weeks in a row.
That's fun.
But it's just how it worked out.
Series. You can call it a series.
A series.
Burnout series.
Mini-series. Now.
So that'll be the first question. Okay. And you may or may not like get into what you said, like when we first started the call about the leadership angle, but if not, then I might even say, so tell us like from the leader's perspective, what do we need? Why is this so important? How are you seeing this show up with your clients or, whatever.
Perfect.
And then, what are some other questions? So I have the leadership angle. What are some other questions you want to make sure I ask?
I think what people typically want to know about burnout is like, what is causing it and what can they do about it to either prevent it or to treat it when it's already happened. And this is from the perspective of leaders who are trying their best not to burn out because they feel really stressed, and also just people in the workplace who are experiencing, whatever in the day-to-day. And so that's where my perspective is a little bit different, because people talk about the causes as being, directly related to job demands and having enough resources to meet the demands or not. And the truth of the matter is, it's just a much more complicated equation than that, because it has to do with the individual's value set, their needs in life, their other life domains that aren't just work. And so where treatment goes wrong for people is they're just trying to address the work domain, and that's honestly a lot of times not the actual root cause of the burnout or what's going on. And then on the other side of it, they treat it like depression, or they treat it like just take a time out, take a break, your self-care hasn't been good enough. But the truth is, for most people, there's an alignment issue that just taking a leave of absence is not actually going to fix. So people end up sabotaging themselves, blocked in all these different ways. And what they have to do is actually self-exploration, work on themselves to figure out what those things that are out of whack are, and get them in alignment. And that's kind of the secret sauce, and the mechanisms for that, the different types of tools and, coaching, therapy, yada, yada, like all those things are valid and relevant, but people kind of, that's where they get it wrong with treating or addressing burnout.
Okay. I think that's so great. And that is a completely different angle. Like, I do think that where everybody, by the way, Shar, meet Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Nice
It's
to meet
probably just
you.
going to be this power, but also look at us today.
I know. I was just thinking that.
Shades of
It's
pink.
the pink and purple day.
Love it.
Yes. I know. I feel like I have a stack of pink stuff. I need to go change.
No, it's
No,
spring tones.
yeah, Jules, you and I like to compliment each other without knowing it.
Always.
So
I
just to
remember the one guest we had, he was like, I'm going to get changed. So I matched the group and he went and got changed. We were like, okay, like dedication. Love it.
just to give you guys like a little background, I think it's going to be us. I don't think anyone else is, well, I mean, who knows? Maybe Howard.
Is
or
Sam
something.
not joining us today?
Who?
Sam?
No, he's on a plane.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to be Sam today. Jules is going to be Jules. Char's going to be Char, and Jessica's going to be Jessica.
Excellent.
And so just to let you guys know the background, Jessica and I are actually in a program together, a coaching program. So for me, I'm learning to coach like primarily people who use food for coping.
Okay.
And because that's what I do. And so I went through the program and I'm learning to coach people. And so Jessica and I met, and she uses the techniques to help people who are doing or burning out or burned out. And she's going to tell us more, because even I don't have like all the details, that she was like kind of doing this before, but then she's been adding to like her toolkit of how she can help people. But we use some kind of, different approaches from just like,
Talking
like she
about
said,
it.
like talk therapy or just like take a time out or whatever. But it's like, you need to still be able to work and be productive. And the other cool thing that you were just saying, Jessica, I want to make sure we talk about is like the values alignment. I think is so huge, because that's where I come from with my like talent development work. Is when I used to do orientation, for my organizations, one of the things we would do is a values exercise. We would have them do their values, like they had a big list that they could pick from. And then we would talk about the company values. And then they would have to do kind of like draw the line between like, what are your values and how do they line up to the company values? And that was so huge, because then on the first day, they're already kind of like, oh, me and this company are aligned, and making that connection. And to your point about like, that to really get to the root cause, that's what our program that we're in is teaching us to do, is like go back to even a lot of subconscious stuff, like in your childhood and teenage and 20s, like you have all this stuff that's like stuck in you. And unless you go back to it and figure it out, then you can't really move forward sometimes. And so getting to the root cause. And I think that blanket of just saying like, well, just meditate, go to yoga, eat right, exercise, and sleep, is not going to change. And even getting a new boss is not going to necessarily get to the root cause of all of this. So I'm excited to hear you talk about this application in the workplace. Because
that sounds really interesting.
Argue that all these employees that would leave or whatever, that it was a values mismatch. And if we weren't doing that exercise really on day one, it was hard to even see if there was a connection or where the disconnection was.
The problem is if there's a value mismatch and someone doesn't get to the deeper stuff of why they keep picking the bad thing for them, it's cyclical. They end up just jumping to another job to have the same thing happen again. And that's what I see is like people with this career story, 20 years down the road, and they are job hoppers or this or that. And it's true, we're less sticky in the market these days because we're looking for something different. We're shopping around more, I think, than we did before. And we expect more of our bosses, more of our employers, and all of that. And if they break a promise to us, we're like a little kid who got a lollipop taken out of their mouth and not adapting to change super well either. So it's really complicated to be a leader. And the burnout issue is a complicated personal one that is about a relationship between people and work, not on one or the other, right? And so corporate America has to change and adapt to what the workforce wants and needs. But people also, have to show up and play the game, right?
Yeah, and Char, you missed something that Jessica is going to re-say once we get started, kind of near the beginning, but just her perspective on like the toll on leaders. She's really going to come from the leadership perspective, and which will be good for you, Char. And, you know, because that's what Sam really wanted her to focus on is like even the burnout for leaders because of like the role that they have to take and like all this pressure that they have to be like responsible for their employees' happiness and all this stuff. Like it's really a lot. So that's a good, just very unique angle that we often just talk to the individual, but she's really going to address our leaders that are on the call and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of the
and Jessica, I've had over 25 years in human resources and talent management strategy. A big chunk of that was traditional HR, and then I kind of grew into the talent side. So I worked with, you know, hundreds of leaders all the time. So I would have leaders in and out of my office constantly. So yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So Jules, when you talk about my intro, can you just kind of highlight my HR background?
Okay,
a little bit more? I mean, I have kind of more the entrepreneurial side, but I think with the leadership side, that would be good. And did we already mention to Jessica that we usually use our mute buttons? So if we have something to say.
Yeah, so I want to get in a little logistics. So let's just pause for 1 second because I need to get us out.
We need to go live.
Well, it's not showing that we're in the practice session, so we might actually be live right now.
Oh, I did. It's recording. Yes.
Hello.
So I guess,
sure.
but I don't know if it's live streaming to. Did you already?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. No. Okay, so it's just like Zoom recording.
I think the Zoom is live, and we don't have any other participants, so that's good.
Yep.
I never said that we weren't in the practice session anymore, so that's what I'm confused about. Is usually you have to say like end practice session, but this isn't a practice session anymore, is it?
No. I just had looked in. It just said you're joining as a panelist. So
okay. Well, for some reason, I know maybe I actually clicked that by accident. So at the top of the hour, I will click on go live to across all the platforms. So we'll just from now we're just gonna, that could be that looks, it's just us. So that's good. And we're not live anywhere else except for Zoom. So
it'll be kind of a female point of view.
Yeah. So then what we do, Jessica, is we will all mute except for you, since you're the like head guru today. But then if any one of us unmutes, it means that we have something we want to comment about or say or something. And so either Jules or me or Char will either be like, oh, do you have something to say? Or the person can just pipe in. But just so you kind of know, in case that happens, that's our little signal that okay, we have something that we want to pipe in about. And
are you talking, Char? I can't hear you.
I was giving you an example of blatantly interrupting.
Yeah.
without my mute on.
There we go. And then the other thing too, Jessica, another logistical thing, you don't have to worry about the chat, because sometimes people do make comments, agree with something, or they ask questions. So if there's any questions that pop up in the chat, you don't have to refer to it at all. I'll just be kind of going back and forth. So if a question does pop up, I'll unmute myself as well and be like, okay, so we have a question. It's so just
awesome.
You can just focus on what you need to say, and I'll be in the chat. So
perfect.
And Howard just joined us. Howard.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, Char.
Josie.
Howard.
Where are you, Jessica? Again, you're Washington?
Yeah, Washington State. I'm outside of Portland.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Howard's
They're winner pink tones. They're winner pink tones, Howard. You need to go put a pink shirt on, please.
I think there's some red on the inside of his shirt. Can you
okay, yeah.
Can you do your collar a little bit?
There you go. How you fit.
There you go. Pop that up like you're in the 80s.
Pop it.
Well, darn it. We were going to have an all-female cast and you ruined it.
Oh, look, diversity.
It's okay. We need gender balance here.
And we still have a few minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad. This has been a long time coming. Jessica and I planned this a couple of months ago. So, and it's cool because we're in a program together, but I still actually don't, and we talked a little bit about her work, but really we haven't gotten to the meat of it. So I'm actually so excited to learn more about it today. So
awesome.
Yeah. So thanks. Glad it could work out. It was weird. We were talking about something else. I was like, hey, any chance you want to be a speaker on our forum? You would be amazing. Because we were like talking about our stuff, and then it was like she just sort of started mentioning all this other things that was like, that's kind of like what I do at my work, and
Cool. Yeah. And you,
That's why
Jessica, you
programs are so great, because you meet so many people
Yeah.
that are on the same level, trying to do the same thing as you, and it's just like, it's a quicker connection, it's a deeper connection. So I love coaching programs. You
Me
meet all-
too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
find people in your tribe somehow. It's just like part of the magic of that kind of program, because people who are, I don't know, self-seeking, self-learners, all those kinds of things tend to be like, attracted to that kind of program. So
that's
did
right.
you
Like, I'm a lifelong learner, so it's so nice to be around other people that are also like, yeah, I might be in the middle of my life or at the end of my life, but I'm still going to learn something new. I'm still going to try something, still keep growing. What were you going to say, Shar?
I'm sorry. Here I am interrupting. Jessica, did you say that you're in Washington?
yeah, Washington State,
Okay. What town?
Vancouver.
Oh, okay, cool. I lived there in Puyallup for a little while, Tacoma area for a little
Nice.
while.
Yeah, just a couple hours north of where I'm at.
Yeah, but that was a long time
That's
ago
right
when
on
I was
the-
at
The Columbia.
the Columbia.
Yeah.
So
It's right
are
on the
you
border
on
of the states, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
which is why I usually tell people who are not from, the area, like Portland Metro. But when you ask Washington State, like, yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're part of the Portland Metro. So I'm right on the border, get the best of both worlds, no income tax, and I can go to Portland for no sales tax. So there you go.
Love that.
That's awesome.
Got to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going to go live here in a second. We do have some folks joining us live. This is so exciting. I'm going to try to open up the chat here that, let's see, I'm not sure if I am able to or not today, Jules, so I may end up having to manage. I'll be able to see it if not, but let's see.
Q&A will
How
still
did I
work.
do that before? The Q&A, that's how we did it, I think, the last time.
Okay.
Let me see if I can, I'm not sure. This was a question I had.
Right.
I didn't get answered. So,
For anyone that's hopping on, that's
work
regular.
amongst yourselves.
Wendy's hopping in as Sam today. So obviously, Sam is our tech guy. He has this figured out. He has it down. He keeps us in check. He's the timekeeper. He's everything. So as you can see, we're struggling a little bit today. We're trying to open this chat box up. So worst case scenario, I guess we can use the Q&A. Yes, I guess we'll figure all this out.
Will somebody Google how to open chat in Zoom? Yeah, for a webinar.
Well, I see the bump. I see the little chat at the bottom of my screen, but
yeah, I think because you're but if you click in it, you can't actually message to the whole like to everybody. It'll just be to the just us.
see.
Yeah.
I got it.
Oh, good. We've got more people joining us live. Welcome. We're going to get started here in just a minute. We're working on opening up the chat.
Oh, you know what, Wendy?
Yeah.
Right to just host and panelists. So if someone does have a question,
Okay.
they can actually address it just to host and panelists. So it won't be out in the open. It'll be a private message. But I think that's
Okay.
I mean, if we can't open it, we can just do that.
Okay. Well, if anyone is able to Google that and tell me how to do it, I will definitely try. And we're about to go live here all across the interwebs.
Interwebs all over the world. We represent everywhere from Mexico all the way across the US of A.
I think you have to do
That's cool.
in settings.
Daniel Daniel might save the day.
Good. Oh, perfect.
I just cut a screen. Yeah, my screen. Okay. I know if that makes sense to you, Wendy, maybe.
Oh, I can't see it because I'm logging in to get the live stream going here. What does he say to do?
Okay. So while screen sharing, a red icon will appear next to chat indicating the amount of unread messages. Click chat to open the chat window.
Yeah, there's a red button.
Yeah.
I see it next to your name, Wendy. If you click on chat and then look at your name, there's a red button next to the microphone.
Okay.
I think he said to, let me see, what did he say, to click on that?
Oh, cool. Okay, let's see. Chat.
I know what it feels like. I lost my phone a few weeks ago, so.
Oh no.
Yeah, I have actually been on a phone hiatus. It's been very challenging for me.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get us going live, and then I will share the screen and I will try to open the chat at that point. So give me 1 second here to get, whoops, too many screens. This is where you want a lot of monitors.
Yeah, it's just like Sam has. I want to see his monitor room. I'm sure it's like insane.
It's so organized. Everything has its place. I can just imagine it.
But Sam does hosting, Jessica, from everywhere, from Hawaii, from France to
Last week we had
Arizona.
Amazing technology these days.
And so he is our tech guru. I could use his help.
Okay, let's go into full screen here. Oops. Okay.
All right, one time I did a Zoom, I was hosting a Zoom and I didn't know how to make it full screen. And I felt it was so embarrassing. And people were like, click the green button. And I'm like, where is it? I don't know where it is. And I was so stressed and it was the easiest thing. Yes. You know, sometimes we just get pushed out of our comfort zones a little bit, but it worked
There you
out.
go. That was the magic.
The magic green button.
I know. I was like, what green button? I can't see the green button.
If only life was that easy. All you have to do
I know. I was like, listen, guys, I'm here to teach how to like host on camera, not do all the tech stuff. But it was all good. At least they were a good group, very understanding. They were trying to help. But yeah, I've never forgotten that green button.
Well, let's, I think you guys can see my presentation here. Good. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We've got a nice crew joining us live today.
Yes. All right. Hi, everyone. Well, after all that, thank you for hanging out with us and being patient. We really appreciate that. Welcome to the People Strategy Forum. My name is Jules, and I will be introducing our guest speaker as well as our awesome panel of hosts today. And I also spend most of the time in the chat. So hopefully we can get that open. If not, you can just address it to hosts and panelists. So we'll be able to get any of your questions, comments, feedback. We'll just make it work today. So today we are covering the topic of preventing burnout in high-performing leaders. I know that there's so many leaders out there, managers, so this is definitely going to be catered towards you. And we have Jessica Lueck with us today, so I'll introduce her in just a moment, but I want to go back in case there's any new faces here at the People Strategy Forum. Things are a little bit different today, so if this is your first time, bear with us. It's usually a little bit more of a flow because we have Sam who does all the tech stuff for us, and Sam's not able to be here today. So Wendy is doing an amazing job stepping in for him today. So yeah, we'll head over to the next slide and I'll introduce everyone that's here. So we have Wendy, who is, as I mentioned, helping us host today. Oh yeah, I missed this slide. It's all happening. So the People Strategy Forum, let me go back again. We're really here to engage, energize, and elevate your employees and company. So hop on each week. This is always free. We do it live on Zoom. We stream to Facebook, LinkedIn. We also have a podcast. So, and we always have a different guest speaker as well. So we like to keep the variety there, and we always try to keep it conversational and fun. We don't like to talk at you, we like to just keep it fun, keep it natural. So to help us today, we have a full panel of hosts, and a lot of these guys are regulars, so I'm sure you've seen their faces before if you show up quite often here. So yeah, normally we do have Sam kind of helping to run the tech side of things, but he's flying right now. But we also have Shah, who is an entrepreneur. She runs multiple small businesses, but if we take it back, she really had a very long career working in the corporate world, specifically in human resources. So she really helps talent. She is very knowledgeable in talent management strategies. So I think she's going to have a lot to contribute to today's conversation about burnout, because I'm sure she's got many burnt out leaders in her corporate career.
Yes, I always say, give me your issue and I'll give you a tissue.
I love that.
I mean, it's kind of a hokey HR joke for leaders that would come in my office burnt out.
Love it. Perfect. Oh, Sumit has just also hopped on too. So welcome, Sumit. Sumit is part of the comp team crew. He also is an HR consultant and people strategist, and he helps companies of various sizes utilize better HR processes and strategies. And we also have Howard joining us as well. And Howard is also with comp team. He's had a corporate career, but he is now all things compensation. If you need compensation strategies, he's the go-to person for that, because he really knows how to get away from the old way of doing things with compensation and implementing new software so that companies can function a whole lot better. We also have Wendy, who is today, she's Sam, but she is she's been helping us run the People Strategy Forum a lot as well. She is a learning and development professional. She also specializes in talent management and helping companies with their talent processes. All right, so that's our team, that's our crew. Let me introduce you to our fabulous guest speaker. I know you're going to have a great time with this. We have Jessica Lueck joining us today, and actually, Wendy found her because they happen to be in the same coaching program. So that's pretty cool. And this is why programs are so great. You meet such awesome people, and we're very happy she's joining us. So a little bit about Jessica. She is a business psychologist with a PhD in business psychology. She is a coach, and she utilizes many different methods, from psychological consulting and coaching tools, even EFT and tapping methods, to help her clients and companies, tap into what really the root of their burnout is, why they're stressing out, and to help them live better lives. So we're very excited to dive into this conversation. Again, any questions? I don't know if we've managed to open the chat, so just write to the hosts and panelists or use the Q&A. This is going to be a great conversation, and thank you again for joining us, Jessica, through all our tech fun and tech hurdles today.
Thanks for having me. So happy to be here with all of you.
Jessica, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And the first question we like to ask our expert contributors is just, how did you get into this? How did you go down this, and how did you, what's been your experience that really led you to wanting to pursue this?
Well, the short version of the story is that I got burned out, and I burned out a couple of times. To get a PhD, you're in school for a very long time to begin with. And so it takes a certain personality type, an overachiever, if you will. And there's something about people who burn out that we tend to be overachievers, overdoers, overthinkers, over, right? And so the story for me is really in figuring out what all of that was about and finding where my misalignment was, because I went to school to be a therapist. I knew I was a helper, but that mode of working with people has some limitations. It was a little bit hard for me. I ended up burning out because a lot of the secondary trauma that I had experienced working in that field. And so at some point I had a moment of realization where it's like, it's not that I'm not a people helper, but maybe this isn't the right venue. So I continued my search and I went back to school. I figured at the time, work is a place that we spend so much of our lives that a sort of side passion for me became this idea of happy people at work, because I was searching for it myself. And so in the process of doing my PhD, working as a consultant for enterprise organizations, doing career transition coaching for people, I was also working on my doctoral research and my study. And so I ended up studying burnout and getting really, really intimately familiar with what this is, what it meant. And so over the course of time and reading and trying different things, I've put together a bunch of different tools that kind of help to really pinpoint this and get to the root causes in a different way, I think, than a lot of people tend to look at the topic. So for me, it was a really personal journey that kept me looking and trying to find and researching and talking to people and working with people, coaching, consulting, all that kind of stuff, to come to a point where I'm like, aha, I think I can really do something with this. So that's where I'm at today. And I think, for leaders specifically, and getting into that level is a really big challenge today, more than it has been maybe in the past, because the noise in the world is just more than it has been, right? We're coming out of the pandemic. We're sort of in this endemic phase, but I believe that has expedited what's already going on in society, which is this philosophical change around the world of work, around our relationship to work and what it means. And people are just looking for a little bit more. And so in my research, I looked at that idea of more and what does it mean specifically to burnout? What does meaning and purpose and this idea of fulfillment really mean from an individual perspective when it comes to how we approach work? So leaders have the fun of managing all of that internally, but also on behalf of all of their team members when we have such a complex work environment going on right now.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me to think about it from the leadership perspective and think about like the extra impetus for burnout for these leaders because, of all the weight and pressure of like not only keeping themselves excited about their work, but then all these other people on their team and in their organization and their company. If you could speak just to even a little bit more about that.
Sure. So leaders have the fun of having their own job, and then they have the job of being a leader. And they represent, as a leader, all of the company promises, all of the company change, everything that an organization is doing. The leader has to hold that on behalf of the company, be responsible for it and to the employees as well as their bosses. And so there's a complicated dynamic that happens, and your leaders may not even be behind the changes going on. They may personally have to get themselves to a place that they're okay with what's going on and can walk the walk and talk the talk. And that's sort of the challenge of the leader, is having to fake it till you make it almost all the time to get the shoes on around the change or whatever philosophy it is your company or you as a leader are trying to drive. You have to get there and you have to get your team there. And oftentimes it's at the same time. So when you think about people and emotions and processing and how long it takes and the extra mental and emotional energy to get there, leaders have to do this in a very pressure cooked short period of time, and they have to compartmentalize, which we know we're actually not good at as human beings. We're kind of terrible at it. And so what happens is we end up in an environment where we're expected to just hold it in, but when people start to burn out, they can't. Their capacity to self-regulate just absolutely goes away. And when you're responsible for the entire culture of your team, for the happiness of your working group, as well as, honestly, companies hold leaders accountable to whether their employees stay or attrit and leave the company, which is maybe not a realistic accountability, right? Those things add a crazy amount of pressure on top top of just the day-to-day. And of course, as leaders, we want our employees to be happy and to be engaged. And, you know, we got to the leadership level probably because we are also those overperformers, overachievers, right? People who want to do well, to help others, all those kinds of things, which are, you know, some of the susceptibilities that might also put us on the path to burnout to begin with. So leaders have a unique angle in terms of what their job requires, but they also tend to just be personality types that may have these markers or tendencies towards burning out anyway.
Well, I 100% agree. Go ahead. I 100% agree. In all my years of coaching leaders and working with leaders, it was an interesting position to be an HR person supporting hundreds of leaders, because I really was attempting to build that positive trust where my leaders felt comfortable talking to me about things, which was a very delicate position for an HR leader to be put in, because often HR, no offense to my profession, HR is not liked very well. Okay. And in many circumstances. So I found it a struggle, because I did have leaders that wouldn't come in and open their heart and soul to me and just say, you know, the vice president is pushing down all of this and the organization is going this way and the change is going that way. And my turnover is happening. And there's this new technology with patient health information coming out. And I can't hold it all together. So when I left the corporate world, I developed something called HR with a Heart, where I could be the HR lady outside of HR, you know, the person that the leader could talk to and say, this is confidential. I can maybe complain about all the changes in my workplace, or complain about some of the things, or need some solutions, or just someone to talk to, someone to vent to, because there really wasn't anyone out there. And hiring a coach can be very expensive. And oftentimes leaders don't have, you know, $5,000-$10,000 laying around just to hire someone to help them talk through some of those challenges. So this is definitely a real thing. So I appreciate that you do that. So my question for you is, are you finding leaders feeling comfortable going to you because you're outside of the organization? And a leader can be extremely vulnerable and say, hey, this is the pressure I'm feeling, and I'm thinking I might leave or need to resign or step down. So what's your thought on that, Jessica?
Absolutely. People have freedom in a coaching environment. Someone who's separate from the organization, there's no chance that something's going to get around. And so I think there's that piece of it. The other thing that happens in coaching that doesn't happen in the workplace is you get the whole human, instead of just like the version of self that we may put on at work, which is the case for a lot of people. And so people need to, I think, be free to talk about the patterns going on and where they exist at work, but often work is just a mirror of what's going on in our life, other relationships and things like that. So what I find is that in coaching, yes, being outside of the organization versus being a coach hired in by the organization, because I've done both, there is a difference in what people are willing to disclose and where they're willing to go with it. Because obviously we all want to protect our work entities. And when we're a leader and we're struggling, it's even harder. I think about leadership, I think about moms, I think about people who, you know, take on accountability for other people. And it is really hard to ask for help when you've voluntarily, you know, done that or taken on that responsibility. And so I think part of it too is not knowing how to ask for help, or really where you can go for trusted help. And so in coaching, you can brainstorm some of that and figure out the solutions in a safe environment that won't get back around to, you know, anybody connected.
I have an idea, kind of experimental idea that I want to put out to the panelists. And also we have so many folks joining us live today. I would just like everyone to put in the chat what they think is causing burnout. Just one or many ideas. And then what I want is for Jessica to tell us actually what are some of the root causes, because she has such a different perspective on this than I think what we hear on like mainstream conversation. So I just would love to hear from our participants and also from our panelists what they think is causing it. And then maybe Jules, if you could read from the chat if anything pops in.
For sure. So far we have limited budget, and should we do like one at a time or just read them all out? And okay, so we have limited budget and resources, demands to always be available 24/7. I feel that. I love Smith. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. Too much change, both internally in the organization and globally. And difficulty filling vacant positions. That's what we have so far.
Yeah.
Come on, anybody else? There's lots more people who are on live. We want to hear what you guys think. This is like your chance. You know, you might have like the winning answer.
We also have
you get to have a prize. You get a prize, which is like you got the winning answer. We'll send you a comp team logo. Yeah, we'll send you something from comp team. Anything else pop in before we turn it over?
Yes,
with
so
a
we've
grand
got
reveal.
Another one, unrealistic expectations, poor planning, leadership not listening to business feedback. Another one is inability to get materials and equipment on time. Another, self-inflicted misery, inability to delegate.
Getting closer on the end there.
It's still going. You guys, we're releasing today. I feel it. Too many competing priorities at home and work. Yes. Recruiting. These are great, guys.
Yeah. So good. Well, I'm really excited to actually hear from Jessica, because you also have an interesting way that you talk about it, that they're like blockers to satisfaction. Yes. Satisfaction blockers. So I don't know if that's a good time to introduce this, but tell us what is causing, what's actually causing, what's the root cause of this?
Let me address what's in the chat a little bit, because absolutely everybody pointed out cited causes for attrition. Absolutely, these are real things that people complain about that impact their day-to-day, and they can be factors that lead or contribute towards burnout. But in terms of the big things, these are the drop in the bucket. These are some of the symptoms, the things that we might band-aid and treat with a leave of absence or a change in some, job responsibilities, shifting things a bit. And so they would have you believe that it's an easy equation to solve. And this is where my perspective is a little bit different. What I think the core research and, initial thinking about this is that the responsibility really is on the workplace, because there are a bunch of job demands and not enough resources to meet those demands. Right? That seems like a simple equation and is a lot to what you're speaking to in the chat here. But the issue is that for people, this is different. For people who really get on this path to burnout, there are some internal things, some choices they're making even before anything goes on in the organization that might put them on this path and might make it a cyclical thing for them, right? That a leader, an HR professional might get involved with, like I said, restructuring somebody's role or a leave of absence for, mental health or something like that. But we're putting a Band-Aid on probably what's going on. And Wendy alluded to what I call the 6 satisfaction blockers, which are the deeper things that are really going on for people who tend toward things that cause them a lot of stress, and they constantly sign up for them. So the number one blocker is fear. Okay. The I shoulds, right? Why did you get into work to begin with? Why do you do what you do? Why do you work where you're working? For a lot of people, it's like, well, I have to provide for my family. What would I be doing if I didn't do this? And so there's some sort of fear that is driving their overdoing, overachieving, that kind of thing. Will people love me? will people still want to work with me if I don't show up in the ways that they expect me to? And I'm not talking about being a jerk face at work. I'm just talking like that we are all humans with unique needs. And the equation here is a bit different. You have to get to individual value set, individual paradigms around existing in order to understand where somebody is going to best fit in an organization. And so if someone hasn't gotten around their fear and why they're doing what they're doing in the day-to-day, that's a really epically important place to start. Stemming off of fear comes where most people think they need to start, which is their anger. We all have anger. Anger, when it comes to burnout and people who are on the path to it, looks like someone who is on edge, who's just doesn't have control over what they're saying in the ways they normally would. You might feel it when you're in the car, your road rage gets a little bit higher, you're losing patience with customer service people because you're trying to keep it together at work, you're keeping it together at home. Like, these are some of the things that come up for people who are on this path where they're just on edge, they're drained and they don't have the capacity. And so dealing with the root causes of the anger that people are having as sort of a blocker to satisfaction, right? The why do they keep choosing a path that isn't right for them is the other key piece. And then number 3 is misalignment. This is where all my HR professionals, I think, will go. Shar, you and I talked a little bit about this before we went live. It's the misalignment between who I am, who the workplace is, and what the job needs me to be. And if those things are out of alignment, it is really hard to not get yourself on the path to burnout. And so that speaks to many of the things that came up in the chat, where it's like, yeah, there are environmental and cultural factors when it comes to picking a workplace, to picking a boss and stuff like that. But the bigger piece was also alluded to here, which is misalignment of all of our life domains, right? Again, we don't compartmentalize well. We are people who have demands from work and demands from family, kids, loved ones, recreational activities. We are whole human beings. And so if we don't address the misalignment to the whole person outside of just the workplace, we're not going to get there. Someone's going to end up repeating the cycle again. Okay. So that's the third one. The fourth one is self-sabotage, which is a little bit related to my fifth one, which is the inner rebel. So once you kind of get through your root of like, why am I blocking myself? What am I afraid of? And you look at your motivators and your values and you get yourself aligned and you're still not finding the fulfillment, a lot of times that's just people in their own way. They've kind of figured out the fear, but they haven't taken the steps to make the change yet. And so their inner rebel will enjoy the safety of, not stepping out, of not sort of existing in a more authentic place, which is a hard thing to do in the workplace. But again, when you're searching for the right type of work environment or the right type of boss or team, this is where you have to know yourself. You have to pick the right kind of organization to work for. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody needs to be a leader either, right? Not everybody needs to do X, Y, or Z. And so it's important to know that every position has value. It is part of, a team. And so I think there's something here too, with the self-sabotage and inner rebel, where people have to ask themselves, do they really want to be leaders? And what is that serving for them? Is it, and I should? And to anything, right? Insert being a leader, insert doing this type of work, insert, showing up in X, Y, or Z kind of way here. And people need to be asking those questions and not relying just on the workplace to tell them or to dictate, what they can have in order to be fulfilled or happy. And then the last one is actually limited resources. And here's the caveat to this. This is real or perceived. It doesn't matter. And that's the thing you have to realize as a leader, is that there may not be winning here with direct reports sometimes, because their perception of what was promised to them when they signed up for the job is reality. You kind of can't fight that. And so you have to do your best as a leader to, sort of balance the reality of what you can do and the expectations of an employee. But I think equally so, as a leader, you want to keep your good employees on the boat, but you also need to recognize this equation and where people are not going to fit no matter what you do, because sometimes it's just mutual torture keeping the wrong people for too long. And so as leaders, we have a complicated dynamic with attrition. Sometimes we need to have it, and it's healthy for growth and forward momentum, but we also feel shame and guilt and other things when people get off our bus that way, right? And so that limited resource, as a leader, you are just one person. And so if there's one piece of little advice I can give there, it's the Q-tip: quit taking it personally. So much of this is just not about you. And most people haven't taken that time to do the deep dive to realize what in fact is really about them, and what how much control they really do have over their overall fulfillment, happiness, satisfaction situation.
I want to ask a two-part question, and that was perfect, because what came up for me while you're talking is a perfect lead-in, is like, yeah, so who's responsible for, my individual happiness, my team's happiness, me as a leader, them as individual contributors, how, like, first of all, so that's the first part, is like, from your perspective, who's responsible, and what amount of responsibility do I need to take as a leader? And then the second part is, what can we do about it? So how do we prevent these blockers, or, and how do we treat them if they're like in full force? So that's my two-part question. And like, as a leader, if I know one of my employees is struggling, do I say you should work with Jessica? How do I, like, actually, or is it just up to them to take that initiative? So just want to get your advice from that perspective.
So who's responsible? I think it's like any relationship, to be completely fair. I believe in reciprocity. I think it's both. I think that people have to show up willing to do that work and take personal accountability, which is in and of itself a blocker for some people. They're just not at that place where they can do that, in which case that's a different performance conversation probably. But I think it is up to leaders to be available, to be a trusted source, like Shar was talking about, to address some of those things head on. And where before in the workplace we might not have asked those questions, I think it's very fair to now, in a gentle and empathic way, say, hey, I noticed things have changed a little bit here. Is there something going on? And if you're having your one-to-ones with your direct reports and you're having your performance reviews, there really should be no surprises in terms of some of this stuff. People know when, right, I know you're laughing. This is a company responsibility though, right, to do some of those things to manage people's performance. And so if you're doing those things, you have a relationship with your employee, and you should be having these conversations. And if this is truly an A player who's in the wrong role, sure, advocate for them. But as a leader, just make sure it's not your bias because you just love working with them, right? Because I think there's a lot of just role shifts or growth opportunities or things that can help for people on this path, and organizations can do that. But when people are dealing with cyclical burnout or chronic stress, and this is a pattern of behavior for them, and you've noticed it maybe over a period of time that it ebbs and flows a little bit, or they get on the edge, then yeah, you may suggest finding some outside help to support. And a lot of companies will use their EAP arm in order to sort of facilitate that process of, what is needed. And so I find that coaching is a little bit more palatable for people who don't want to go get therapy and, don't want to be treated for depression when really they're having a life balance issue. So I would say, to me, it is equal responsibility. But if you are that leader who overgives, overdoes, you have to watch that on your own behalf when you are looking at, trying to retain an employee or something like that. So that's where your HR professionals as your sounding board and all of that around these plans, make a lot of sense, having someone to be able to, support things within reason that way.
So here's some of
yeah.
Good.
Sorry. So here's my thought. I was working in HR, particularly in major 160,000 employees, or even 89,000, whatever. But the volatility. I remember when one of the executives came in the room and talked about VUCA and the volatility and uncertainty and chaos and ambiguity. If you remember, that was a big word, and it is so absolutely true. It's like literally working in a hurricane of change. And in my view, the big challenge too is, particularly in my healthcare background, our executive team always turned over, typically every 5 years. And I know that my statisticians here, Howard and Sumit, probably could pop up some statistics on how quickly leadership is turning over all the time. It's like every day. So the entire culture of that department or that organizational unit is completely disrupted. So not only do you have your voluntary resignations and your involuntary resignations happening with your team, you now have your executives changing their priorities. Now you have your leader running around trying to catch up and say, okay, which direction am I going? What's my priorities this week? What's the new vision? The vision changed overnight, and now I got to adjust everything from an organizational strategy. And, it's very uncomfortable for that talent management strategist to try to incorporate the organizational vision to all the change to help the people be on board so that we don't have an explosion in our culture. And I saw this problem constantly. It's like every day I woke up, I was like, oh, what's the new priority for today? Why is this organization so inconsistent? And oftentimes the senior leaders, no offense to some of them, didn't understand the chaos that was creating at all levels of the organization. So I'm just curious what you think about that type of VUCA and what it does to an organization.
I see it all the time. I mean, that's what I used to do, is enterprise level change management. And so living and existing in that chaos with leaders and helping them just get around what was happening for the organization and them. And then, this idea of having to lead through it when you don't even understand it. It is hugely challenging. And I think near impossible with big change initiatives to not have some attrition happen. So again, the quit taking it personally thing is just true. Not every change, everybody is going to make it through. And so I just want to put that out there with some empathy, because I know that's a really hard thing as a leader. And I think too, as a leader, you are a human being who has those choices to make too. Every time a change comes down the pike, you think, how is this impacting me? What's in it for me, right? You go through those things and you're like, oh, great, here's one more. Can I make it through this one? And I think that's where you as a leader have to think about your own health and burnout level and all of that kind of stuff too, and address those in the same way, because I'm kind of the mind that's like, if you can't be a good leader, if you don't have the capacity for it, then don't be. You don't have to, right? And I think it's something that's glorified in our culture and society to move up the food chain in corporate America. But, really high level individual contributors are super, super valuable to organizations. And we need people to feel good about the jobs that they're in. They're going to do a better job that way. And so I think it's complicated. There's not a one size fits all, answer to it, but leaders have to be asking themselves the same questions. And if you can't answer the why I'm going to work day after day, you should be talking to someone to help you figure that out too. If you are hating Mondays and hating getting out of bed day after day after day, and but on the weekends you're fine, like, good sign that maybe there's something out of whack in your relationship to work there.
I want to let Howard found a statistic for us, and I want him to share that. And then I want to really focus now on the solutions, because that's what's really cool about you, Jessica. And I want everybody to hear some of your kind of out of the box solutions that we might not normally hear. Okay, Howard, give it to us.
Well, yeah, I saw a recent article in Fortune this year, and it said CEO turnover hits a 5-year high as companies brace for continued disruption. I think the peak was in 2022. I think it's starting to settle down a little bit this year, but stories yet to be told for 2023.
Yeah. So it was pretty powerful, and I was glad he came. Shar should know not to challenge Howard and submit to some statistics, because they're going to find some even if they don't have any at the ready. So
Yeah, we have all kinds of talents on this team.
All right, Jessica, I want you to take us through, first of all, how it would be to work with someone like you, first of all, to kind of figure out of those blockers, which are the ones that are, really the big issues, which ones do you start with working on? And then take us through, if you're willing to share a little bit of your secret sauce on some of the kind of different techniques that you use. Sure. And because this is, in our corporate world, I think, like you said, we try to leave our personal life behind and blah, 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 and you bring to the corporate world some kind of, I'm going to almost say woo-woo, things that actually are pretty effective. And so why should we in the corporate world be open to those possibly alternative approaches? So I'll let you go for it.
And scientifically validated, I will add, maybe a little woo-woo for some people, but so I'll get into that in a second, because my methods and the way that I work with people are certainly an amalgamation of things that I have learned over years. And I do not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach for every single person. You have to get to know an individual and what makes them tick. So the first thing I do with all of my engagements is assessment. So I use 4 different ones. I use the Myers-Briggs because people usually have taken it. I use a social leadership styles inventory. I use a career values inventory. And I also use a motivators and life satisfaction inventory. So this inventory will identify this combination, I call it a protocol, right, will help me to identify where there are consistencies, inconsistencies. With the motivations, I really look at what types of jobs people would naturally do well in, because their day-to-day is just going to align with that. So thinking about those things that are true for an individual and then being able to map them once you have that data is a lot clearer and easier to make a map. And it takes few hours of time for someone to do the assessments and a couple of hours for us to go through them, versus, I don't know, Wendy, how many soul searching programs have you signed up for to, figure out what's going on, right? If you're a lifelong learner like us, probably a good handful, if not 2. And so we do this really quickly. And as part of this, it looks at your life domains and, kind of looks at where you're putting your energy around them. And then in having a discussion about that, you really look at where are people dissatisfied. And so people might tell you that it's work. Someone might say, I'm so stressed out, I hate going to work. But then you find out that they had some, personal emergency in their family and they're grieving, or there's something else going on. So starting with people on the really, let's figure out where you're suffering is like step 1. Get to know yourself. Let me get to know you. We'll do this really quickly. And then we make a roadmap about where the biggest bang for our buck is going to be. So if I get a sense from our conversations and doing the assessment that you have those big satisfaction blockers, that you're doing things because you think you should and you don't really know why, then we're gonna, get deep pretty quickly and try to manage some of those, I'll use air quotes, limiting beliefs, right? And where they come from. And so the treatment plan, if you will, for me, it looks like a variety of different things for people. It's traditional coaching methods. I will pull in a little bit of my therapy toolbox from time to time, around some cognitive and thinking restructuring, that kind of thing, understanding where emotions come from and trying to reframe some of that self-talk. Like, those are all things that I use. But the other piece that I have more recently come into that Wendy was alluding to is really with stress and this type of chronic issue, managing the symptoms and treating them in a holistic way is really important. So we've been talking about across all the life domains, the whole human, but the other piece of that is mind, body, soul. Right. And I'll use soul air quotes, whatever that means to you, where you derive your meaning, your purpose, your why from, those pieces of you. And so there are different techniques that you can use to get people in their bodies. And one of them is EFT, emotional freedom technique. And it's also colloquially known as tapping. And so what this technique does is it allows people to basically use the same meridian points by tapping on them, that acupuncture, acupressure, massage therapy, Tai Chi, like all these other things we actively participate in. It uses those same energy meridian points to kind of help to alleviate stress, to move the energy in the body. And so people use it for very quick treatment of anxiety, right? Like, I get a little bit of stage fright. So I was tapping a little bit before this session to help me just sort of get centered and clear and get rid of some of those icky feelings. But the deeper stuff we do is really around memories and things that come up, and the way that we're conditioned, the way that we approach life has so much to do with how we learned to as a child. And so that's where this becomes trauma treatment a little bit. And I'll use air quotes. It's just how we learn to react to stress. And so often we are doing that and playing out those things we learned in our family home growing up in the workplace. And so when it comes to my philosophy of treating people and helping with the burnout and stress issue, you need to use some different methods, because for an overthinker, you'll stay here. Eventually you'll outsmart therapy, coaching, whatever tool is addressing your mind, you'll be able to outthink it. And your practitioner, whoever you're working with, will think you're probably doing great, but you're still in here really stuck and really struggling. And so that's where tapping or something that is body centered, helps you get out of your own head. And it actually lets your body do the talking. It's going to tell you where the stress is coming from. And so when you integrate these types of methods, you can get success faster. And because you're addressing the root cause, it's longer lasting. People will learn through this process how to never make the same mistakes again. And they'll know instantly when they're on the path to it, because you get in touch with your body. And stress is a body issue. We know that it causes heart issues. We know that it just basically it's killing people faster than they need to be. It causes all kinds of issues. And I know next week you're having somebody talk about the neuroscience of some of this, so I won't rain on their parade in terms of that. But I think those are pieces that are really important to address in the treatment of what's going on for someone. And that's where other practitioners, other methods for addressing burnout just miss the boat a little bit, because they're not getting deep enough. They're looking at like surface matching and not why a person may be continuing to choose something that just wouldn't fit for them anyway.
Jessica, since you just mentioned that, I want to just take a quick pause to talk about next week. And then when we come back, I'm wondering if you think you could lead us in just like a little sample of the tapping, because your technique is not just like the standard kind of technique that's out there. And so I was wondering if maybe you could just show us how you apply that. Okay, so think about that. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you about next week's speaker is, and by the way, you guys know that the People Strategy Forum is, can you see my screen?
Not yet. No.
Oh, why not? Okay, here we go. Just so you guys know, the People Strategy Forum is sponsored by TMA USA, and that's, you know, a tool similar to what Jessica was talking about using with her clients. And so we also use something to measure people's talents and passions, and also think about their, you know, career interests with like they have a job interest assessment and cognitive as well. So we're really grateful for TMA USA to sponsor the forum every week. And if you're interested to know more about that, you can just email us at support@compteam.net, and we can do a, you can actually have a chance to take one of the assessments and have a dialogue and just see how the tool works. So I'd love to talk with you more about that. And then finally, next week, we have a different perspective on burnout. So we're kind of having like a little mini series here on burnout. It's such a hot topic and such an important topic. Vanessa Bennett, and she's actually in Australia. And so she's going to be joining us to talk about that from a neuroscience perspective, really more the neuroscience behind all of that. So anyway, so please join us next week, and thank you all for joining us live this week. I'll make one more mention. We don't have a slide about it, but it's our upcoming AI Advantage conference is going to be May 16th in Denver, Colorado. If you can't make it to Denver, you can also join virtually. And this is going to be really important if you are a C-suite or HR executive. Please, please, please register. We do have a limited space, but the number of people that are going to be speaking and sharing on how to use AI to really create efficiencies and, you know, make your processes more effective so you can actually get back to the work that you do that really makes, you know, makes an impact in the world. So please, you can learn more about that on our website, and I believe it's AICompAdvantage.com. So please check out the conference. So Jessica, back to you for our last few minutes here. We want to hear if you would take us through a little sample of the tapping or any other techniques that you want to share, whatever you want to share with us. And then also, how would people find out more about you, your group, and what you do in case they want to get a hold of you out after the forum?
Sure. So I did drop, while you were talking, a couple of links in there just so you can, you know, a couple of freebies so you can see what I do. I put my 6 satisfaction blockers in there. This will just let you read a little bit more about that. If you're sitting here going, am I blocked? This is going to help you kind of go, oh yeah, that's me, and this is where, so you can get a little bit deeper there. And then the jessicalueck.com/stop food cravings. I get asked about stress eating all the time, right? When people get stressed out, they just find themselves in, you know, the bottom of a bag of chips or gallon of ice cream or something like that. So this is an EFT demo on a technique to stop food cravings. We won't have time to go through that now, but for people who are interested in what this technique is, to give it a little bit of a try or a sample if you haven't, that's a good thing, a good thing to give a try, because who doesn't struggle with the occasional food craving, right? Yeah, so you can get rid of those nasty things for good using this technique. But what I'll do, I think for now, is just kind of show you the basics of EFT for anybody who doesn't know, to take away a little bit of, you know, the wondering of what this woo-woo thing is, and what the technique looks like. And I will just show you the basic form of it, which I'll give you the example of what I did for my stage fright, right? Before I, you know, kind of got on to talk with you guys. So the way that tapping works is, like I mentioned before, you have these endpoints on your energy meridians in your body. And so we utilize a combination of these points in the same order every time, just as we are processing or experiencing an emotion. And it does help to verbalize the things that you're experiencing to move it through. But also, if you are, you know, in a private place or something like that, you can just think it really hard, and, you know, that'll help you out. So the basic points are the karate chop here. And when you go through, you just tap on them 5 to 10 times or so before moving to the next one. The next one is here, which is the eyebrow. Either side will work. So you have the inner eye, and then you have the outer eye, and then the under eye. The next one is right under the nose here, under the chin, rather under the lip. And then the collarbone right here. Again, this works on either side. You're just lightly tapping on these. And then this one is under the arm here. It's a few inches under your armpit. For ladies, it's right where your bra is usually going to sit there. And then the last one is the top of the head. Okay. And as you tap through these points, in about 3 minutes of just tapping, your body's nervous system is going to calm right down. And all you have to do to get yourself to calm down is to tap. Just like this. Okay. But a more effective way is also to put words, like I mentioned, to what you're feeling, and give yourself a setup statement and allow yourself to express and just kind of help the energy move along. So I may start with a setup statement on my karate chop and just say something like, even though I have this anxiety, I accept myself completely. Even though I have this debilitating stage fright, this feeling in my stomach, this anxiety, I accept myself completely. Even though I have this anxiety, I completely love and accept myself, right? And you do it 3 times and you get that feeling worked up in your body. Even as I was doing it now, I can feel it start to creep up when I think about it too hard. So then from there, you start focusing on that feeling and just continuing to tap through the points, and you can put words to it. This anxiety that I have, I know it comes from this one time that I really messed up when I was competing in public speaking when I was 16. You know, I forgot my line and I'm carrying this fear, and I know where this comes from. And I've done deeper tapping on that fear. So now when it comes up before a session like this, I can just do my 3 minutes of like, I'm good. I'm in my body. I'm present. That anxiety, it's there for me. It's excitement, and I can use it. And so then in a few minutes of tapping, I feel better. And then I can just kind of end my session either on the top of the head, or you can close off your meridian points by grabbing your wrist gently like that. Take a couple deep breaths. And hopefully if you are tapping along with me, you also are feeling calm and ready to go on with your day. So like I said, it really is super simple. The techniques get deeper into things and memories will come up and things like that. But the basics of the technique and why and how it works so great for stress is just, and it's calming down your nervous system in just a couple of minutes. So not much can do that other than an Ativan or something like that. So I encourage you to give it a try. And yes, just reach out to me at my website. I set up a page for you all as leaders, jessicalueck.com/leaders. If you want to get in touch with me because you heard what we talked about today, go ahead and use that page and that link. And I'd love to chat, love to connect, love to have some feedback. The question here, was I tapping all along?
Oh no, I was asking the audience.
To our
Like, are they tapping as we,
Oh,
you know,
oh.
as you are going along?
Yeah.
So we had a few tappers. That's good.
Yes. They said yes, they're tapping.
I'll
I
do
feel
a little
better.
karate chop
I
in one.
feel more relaxed for your anxiety, you know. I feel more relaxed for you.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that. And if there's any other comments, I'm curious from our participants who maybe that's your first time experiencing that, or maybe you've used it before and found it effective, or what your experience was like, please put that in the chat. And if we have any questions, we just have another minute or two. If you have something for Jessica, otherwise, man, thank you for sharing that. I do feel better just going through that exercise. And so I was thinking maybe we should tap on that for like all of our speakers, you know, before the People Strategy Forum, we give like a group, just kind of get the group kind of centered would be kind of a cool way to get it started.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's put that into practice.
It works
Because, you know, we all
great for
fly in from wherever, and then it's just like, how do
Yeah.
we get in the moment for this, you know?
It's
We're all
great
joining
for
at different
grounding.
times too.
Yeah, and even if
thank
you
you,
don't
thank
have an
you.
anxiety around speaking, there's other stuff going on that you can just sort of, like you said, get in your body and get more, you know, get more present and more focused. So I really love that.
I
Yeah,
like
thank you,
the idea of
Jessica.
actually naming what's going on as well, because I've heard of tapping and I was always like, oh, what is this tapping? So I'm glad we got a demo. Thank you for that, because I was secretly hoping for one, but I didn't want to be selfish. So I was like, well, let's see what happens. But just naming it, being like, yeah, I know my anxiety is here, but I love it. I just labeling it and vocalizing it. I was like, this, I can see how like it works together. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. The
And
one
what you said,
go ahead.
and what you said, Jules, about like reframing it, like, yes, I have this, but I'm also, it's like actually because I'm excited. So you like
Yes.
reframed it from like fear to excitement, which I really liked how you said that in the chat. Go ahead, Jessica.
No, that's great. I think that's a key with making tapping effective. A lot of people, if you go down a rabbit hole on YouTube now, you're going to get a lot of people who are trying to tap things out, right? Like tap away the pain, their physical pain, their emotional pain, all that kind of stuff. But it's equally important to tap what you want in. So you can tap to be grounded, for clarity, for all that kind of stuff, and sort of remove the blocks that way. So that is part of the secret sauce to making tapping really effective, is to be able to flip that paradigm. And what taught me how to do that was, you know, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and really that kind of restructuring stuff. So thinking about what you want instead of what you're experiencing, or how you want to interpret what that signal is something that you can work on with tapping for sure.
Thank you so much. We're out of time and we could keep going. So it's hard to say adios, but adios, amigos. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everyone who stuck around live and asked questions and put in comments. And thank you, Sumit, for joining us all the way in India. It's late there. So thank you for jumping on, and from everybody around the world. Thank you for joining the People Strategy Forum, and we'll see you next week. Thank
Bye.
you, Jessica.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, Jessica.
Bye.
Bye.